I didn't want to take too long on this Asics Megablast review because a lot has already been said about these shoes, but I wanted to cover a couple of things that I think reviewers have missed. So let's start by spending 60 seconds on what you might already know. The Asics Megablasts are a big, chunky running shoe with 45mm stack at the back and 37mm at the front for an 8mm drop. That big fat stack of running shoe amazingly weighs in at just 225 grams in my US 9.5. That's mainly due to this new FF Turbo Squared foam, which is light but incredibly stiff and springy. If this much foam was not kind of firm, it'd either need a carbon plate to stop it from being extremely unstable under your foot, or it'd be really soft and squishy, kind of like that feeling of running on a beach, which is the sort of feeling that I get from, say, the Asics Nimbus shoe, which is a shoe I'm really not fond of because of that feeling. So I'm really glad the Megablasts are made of tougher stuff in terms of the stiffness and the firmness of the midsole. And getting to the bottom of the shoe, the outsole, while it's getting a bit grimy now after many runs that I've done here in Japan, there is enough of the actual rubber to offer grip on any surface at all. And that includes trail. Because of the size of the stack on this shoe, I find them really, really comfortable to run on a trail with, and I hope that Asics bring out some sort of a trail-based Megablast just with a slightly lumpier outsole so that we don't slip on the rough stuff. So what do you need to know about this shoe? First, I should actually start off by saying that Benny and I buy all of our own shoes. And that is important, particularly in this discussion. Often I don't talk about the cost of shoes, but that is a big issue when it comes to the Megablast, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So anyway, how do they feel to run in? Let's go through the positives before we talk about the other side. Let me take you on a little run we did this morning, a very cold, wintry morning here in Kurashiki in Japan, to discuss. The laces are ridged, so they always stay in place. They're a really great length, so you can do a runner's knot or a lockdown lacing, whatever you might call it, and have enough to still do that double knot. The padding around the heel cup is absolutely lovely. There's a perfect amount. And the padding of the tongue, which is also gusseted, is at an excellent level. It's a very, very comfortable shoe to put on. The ride itself is solid, but still feels very, very springy. It offers a bit of a kick every time you toe off. Kind of like a carbon-plated shoe, just not quite as soft. You don't get as much sinking down into the shoe as you do in most carbon-plated shoes. The Asics Megablasts have often been described as a fast training shoe, but actually I think they're really good at any pace, particularly if, like me, you're someone who's not all that fond of really, really soft shoes. This is a really great shoe to run at any pace. The difference is, the faster you go, the more pressure you put on the shoe, the more this foam actually gives back, the more it springs back, the more energy it puts in your step. So running slow in these shoes is comfortable. Running fast is a lot of fun. Actually, when you're sprinting in these shoes, it's a really, really interesting sensation. It really does pop your feet up off the ground, and I find that it lifts my knees up a bit higher when I'm sprinting in these shoes because of the way the foam pushes back against my feet. It's good fun. As I said, they're also really good to run on all sorts of surfaces. I've taken this on very mild trails. I haven't been way off-road, I haven't been running over mountains, but I have been on gravelly trails with these, and they are wonderful to run in, just like their cousins, the Superblasts. I've often wished there would be a trail version of the Superblast. I also wish there'd be a trail version of the Megablast. Maybe one day I will get my wish. So yes, the Asics Megablast is undeniably a really great shoe to run in. It's good for a lot of different people. It has the width to be a very stable shoe, even though it's very tall. It has the firmness of foam to be a very stable shoe, even though it's very tall. It is possibly the best all-rounder running shoe that you can buy right now. So what's my problem? Where are the negatives of this shoe? Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about now. First is the fact that it is such an enormous shoe. It really is a massive shoe to have on your foot, and you do know about it. It's not the sort of shoe that disappears on your foot like its other family member, the Metaspeed Sky, which does disappear on your foot. I mean, you certainly know that there's a lovely piece of soft and incredibly springy foam under your foot, but as far as the rest of the shoe goes, it really does disappear. That is not something that you can say say about the Megablast. You always know that you've got the Megablast on. For some people, during a long run, whether it's a long training run or whether it's a full marathon or a half marathon event, this will be a positive. But for others, particularly people who during those events are chasing a particular time, it will not be a positive. They will want to go for a lighter shoe, something which doesn't quite weigh their foot down as much, and something which kind of just gets out of the way and lets them do the job of running faster. Number 2 is the upper. The upper is very, very comfortable, but it is not very breathable. Yes, it breathes, but it doesn't breathe nearly as well as other shoes like the Superblast or the Meta Speed that I talked about before, which basically feels as if you're wearing nothing. The runs I've been doing here in Japan in this shoe have been around freezing or 1 degree or 2 degrees. That's around about the temperature I've been running in. My feet in this shoe have always been warm. So in those conditions, this is great. A shoe that doesn't breathe so much and keeps my feet kind of warm in very cold conditions is really, really good. But when I go home to Australia and I start running in the Australian summer heat, I'm actually a tiny bit worried about how these shoes are going to feel in the real heat. And I've got a feeling I'm going to find myself reaching for the Superblasts, which do breathe much better than this Megablast material. Third, and this is something that I've mentioned in a past video, is this kind of unnecessary skirt that goes around the heel cup of the shoe. That, when you're on a trail, does tend to catch little rocks, and it does tend to feed those rocks down into the shoe, which a couple of times has meant that I've had to stop, take the shoe off, and shake out the little rock to keep on running. I suspect that this skirt that has been designed into the back of the shoe was put there to make it look different to the Superblast, which is something that Asics had to do when it released 2 fairly similar types of shoes. But in the next edition, the Megablast 2, I hope it disappears because it's unnecessary and it does tend to feed rubbish down into your shoes. And finally, number 4 for me is the really big one, and that is the price. In Australia, and I know that these prices are reflected around the world as well, but I'm just going to talk in Australian dollars for now. This shoe costs $360, which is astounding. That is incredibly expensive. Consider, for example, that these, in the same market, these Adidas Evo SL Wovens and the normal OG Adidas Evos sell for $240. In that same market, the Puma Deviate Nitro 3s, a plated training shoe, sell for $250. The Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3s, probably my favorite racing shoe right now, once again carbon plated, sell for $320. So then along comes Asics with these, what essentially manufacturing wise is a fairly traditional shoe. There's no plate in this thing, and they're charging $360 for it. Now, I don't usually talk about price on this channel because price is actually a very personal thing. For some people, $360 is nothing. For a lot of people, and particularly in the current environment, $360 is a whole lot of money. And so I think this is worth discussing and thinking about. Is this shoe worth it? And only you can answer that. Only you know the answer to that because, as I said, price is personal. And so that's it. The Asics Megablast, a mega performing shoe with a matching mega price tag. Not a perfect shoe, but a spectacular shoe all the same. Would I recommend buying this shoe? At full price, I'm not sure if I would recommend it. If, like me, you're lucky enough to find yourself in a situation where you can get them below the recommended retail price, then yes, absolutely go for it. But at full price, I would question whether they're worth it. And that's also why I mentioned that Benny and I pay for review shoes ourselves. I think it's really important that shoe reviewers feel the financial pain of buying the shoes, as well as feeling the joy of the performance. And that's why I'd love to ask again if you could like this video and subscribe to this channel. If in fact you have learned something from this video, Benny and I really appreciate it. Thank you. Until next week from here in Kurashiki, Japan, run slow or run hard, run safe, and we will see you then.